Moving makes us happy. All right. So there was a happiness researcher at the University of Pennsylvania, and he was working with a group of students who had self-proclaimed, they had categorized themselves as severely depressed. And he gave them one exercise to try to become happier. That exercise was that at the end of every day to recall and write down 3 positive things that happened that day. What they found was after just 15 days of recalling and writing down 3 positive things, 94% of them went from categorizing themselves from severely depressed as to either moderately or mildly depressed. One simple action can completely change your state of happiness. So last month, at the beginning of September, I was doing a school kickoff for a large school district, and I knew I was going to be sharing this research with the teachers. So I was out front talking to some of them before I went on, and I said, so tell me 3 great things about being a teacher. And one woman looked at me and she goes, June, July, and August. I thought, oh, honey, I'm glad you're going to be in my session, because I am on a mission to make this world a happier place. Reason, because there are a lot of really miserable people out there. There are some people who are only happy when they're miserable. Yeah. And some of them love it so much, they think it's their job to make you miserable too. You might know some of those people. You know, there are people who, when they walk into work in the morning, it just makes your day. And there are people who, when they don't show up for work in the morning, it just makes your day. Yeah. If you didn't laugh at that, you might be one of them. But the truth is, most of us crave more fun, more happiness in our lives. How many of you would love to have more fun, more happiness in your life? Yeah, whoop, whoop. Look around. Yeah, whoop, whoop. That is the universal, whoop, is the universal cry for joy, excitement, fun. I want us to whoop it up in the time that we have together. And I saw y'all on the cruise last night. I know some of you can whoop it up. So let's practice. I'm going to go whoop, whoop, and then you're going to do it right after. And feel free to just throw those arm motions in there, all right? Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. All right, today, anytime you hear something you really like, something you agree with, something you think is awesome, you just feel free to go whoop, whoop, okay? All right. So there actually is a reason that most of us crave happiness, and it is because it is actually good for us. It makes us healthier. Science can now validate that being happy and laughing and having fun can lower our blood pressure, it improves our heart function, our body makes more endorphins, and it actually helps our body create cancer-fighting T cells, just to be happy and to laugh. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen the commercials. Can you imagine if we took a pill that gave us all those benefits? You know, side effects may include blurred vision, constipation, dry mouth, hair loss, insomnia, thoughts of suicide, vomiting, renal failure. I don't even know where my renal is, but I know I would just much rather be happy than have it fail. So we know that happiness is good for us personally, but why does happiness at work matter? Well, you know, I can give you all kinds of statistics that are validated by studies and how happy employees miss 10 times less work. Happy employees are 12% more productive. Happy salespeople have 30% higher sales. And companies or co-ops with happy employees outperform the competition by 20%. So there is a real valid business reason for having happy employees. And I'll tell you, it's been so encouraging, as I shared earlier, being a member of a co-op for 11 years now, the responsibility that you take for being, you know, fiscally responsible with members' money. There's a bottom line payoff for when employees get happy. But the bottom line is that we as women, and I would venture to guess, especially as admin, you're working harder than any generation of women, any generation of admins have ever worked before. You're being asked to do more with less. I don't know if this happens in the electric co-ops, but I talk to admins all over the country, and very often somebody will retire or leave, and instead of replacing them, they just say, oh, all the other admins are going to pick that up. Does that ever happen in your co-ops? Yeah. The work that we're being asked to do is far more complex. I guarantee you 50 years ago, admins did not need to know how to use Excel or Outlook, right? So a lot more is being asked of us. And yet, at the same time, we're not becoming happier. We've advanced and we've grown and we've been given more responsibility, but it's not making us happier. So what we're going to look at today is how we get happier. I'm going to share with you what makes up our happiness, what part of that we can control, and then I'm going to give you 5 strategies for how to become happier. You ready to learn how? Okay, whoop, whoop. Good. So 20 years ago, when they started to study positive psychology, they started with the assumption that 90% of a person's happiness was going to be based on their circumstances. What they found, surprisingly enough, is that only 10% of your happiness is based on your circumstances. 90% is based on how you process those circumstances. Of the 90%, 50% is what they call your happiness set point. It's kind of something you inherited from your parents, from your early childhood. They used to think that you couldn't really change that happiness set point. They're now kind of finding that you can. And our happiness set point is kind of like how we all have a body weight set point. You know, I kind of came out of the womb at a man's size 14, been trying to work my way down. We know those women who can eat anything they want, never exercise, and they stay this big. True story. I went to a 10-day fasting retreat. No food for 10 days. Yeah, I know. Why? Yeah. Nobody whooped on that one. They weighed us all at the beginning of the retreat, and then they weighed us the last day of the retreat. There was one man I remember that lost 37 pounds. There was a woman that lost 28 pounds. I am so excited. I get up on the scale, 10 days, no food, lost 2 pounds. I was like, what? That's like when I had my 5th child. I had all C-sections. I met my little OBGYN who looks like he's 12. I mean, I think I had to be one of his first, and he looks at me and says, now, Mrs. Hodous, we want you to gain 30 pounds. I said, per trimester? I mean, like, I gained 20 pounds on family vacation, you know. So we can't always do a whole lot about our body weight set point, but there is something we can do about our happiness set point. And then 40% of our happiness is made up of intentional activities, specific actions that each of us can take on a daily basis to make ourselves happier. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is those intentional actions that we can take so that we can become happier. And we're going to talk about happiness at work and at home. And happiness at work doesn't have anything to do with what you do. I know you're all admins in here, but I've talked to a lot of you. Some of you come from co-ops with 3,500 meters and 13 employees. Some of you come from the G&Ts that supply 27 cooperatives. It doesn't matter what you do. Some of you work for just the CEO. Some of you also do like HR and building the facilities maintenance. I'm like, that sounds more like a director or a VP than an admin. So I know that your duties vary widely. Happiness is not about what we do, it's about how we do it. So let's get to those 5 strategies that will help you become happier. The first one is being present. Being present, showing up in our own lives instead of just kind of standing on the sidelines and watching an experience through the filter of, how can I post this on Facebook so it makes me look cool, right? To really engage and be present. And there are millions and millions and millions of people who show up every day, are totally present, completely engaged with whoever they are interacting with. From the minute their feet hit the floor till their head hits the pillow, they are full on present and engaged. Do you know what these millions of people have in common? They're under the age of 3. I have always said children are our teachers. That's why I had to have 5. I have had a lot to learn. Yeah. So there are a lot of people who can give us the example of showing up. Now, there is one deterrent, and one of the reasons that I think we are not as happy as women in 1974 has to do with this. Is there anybody in this room who does not have a phone? One person? Woohoo! I have never gotten one. Yay! Let's give her a whoop whoop. Most of us, 99.9% of us, have this. And you know what? This whole theory of you can't be in 2 places at once. I mean, our foremothers, if they were going to be present with somebody, they had to physically be in the same room with them. Today, you can be in this room with me, but if you decide you're going to text and have a conversation, you're not in this room with me. You're out there having a conversation with them. If you decide to troll Facebook and look at the vacation pictures from the really hunky guy that sat next to you in 10th grade Spanish, guess what? You're on vacation with him. You're not here with me, and more than likely, he didn't pay any attention to you in high school. Why are you letting him hijack your life now? We got to show up and be present. And you know, the whole thing about a phone is so often when we engage on that phone, we've let somebody else's agenda come before our own. We're letting somebody else run our lives. You know, I coach a lot of women. I remember I was coaching this high-powered CEO, and she came to me for happiness coaching. Her life looked perfect on the outside, but she was miserable. And when we started to look at her life, and I said, okay, tell me how you start your day. Do you know what she did? She woke up and checked emails while she was still in bed. Who is going to be happy starting their day that way? 50 years ago, admins didn't go to work till they got to the office. Today, if you let it happen, you can be at work while you're still in your pajamas laying in your bed. We've got to set a boundary. I call it unplugging. And if we're truly going to show up in our lives and participate, we've got to unplug. When you're at home, be at home. When you're at work, be at work. I know other speakers today have alluded to that. My mother was a classroom school teacher. She taught for 44 years. In the 44 years she was in the classroom, I never once, ever talked to her throughout the day. I think I've turned out all right. At some point, we've decided we have to be available to everybody all the time. If we want to get happier, we have got to be available to ourselves. Whoop, whoop! Yes, we've got to show up in our own lives. So I'm going to challenge you. I call it the 60-90 rule. I'm going to challenge you to start small. I know it's tough. I run a business. I've got teenagers. I travel a lot. But we've got to create spaces where we unplug. So the 60-90 second rule applies to during the day. They've studied our brain waves, and we can only focus for 60 to 90 minutes at a time. You probably find this. You know, after you've been working at your desk for 60, 90 minutes, you're kind of like, you know, you get that little itchy feeling like, oh, I got to do something, you know. So when you get up, don't make your default after 60 or 90 minutes of work be to like, oh, I'll check my phone. Oh, I'll check email. No. Get up, go look out a window. They find even looking at nature can make you calmer. Go get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, don't take your phone. Create a little space, a window where you're unplugged, where you are just being and observing what's around you. And then take the 60-90 micro rule, 60 to 90 minutes, and try a couple times a day to create 60 or 90 minutes at a time when you're unplugged. First thing in the morning. Think about when our mothers got up. Well, depending on how old you are. When my mother got up, you know, she had a pot of coffee. She probably had a cigarette because they didn't know it was so bad for you back then, you know. But they connected with their family. There was no TV on. So they connected. They engaged. They were present in their lives. And, you know, screens will keep us up at night. If you have trouble sleeping, 90 minutes before bed, don't get on any screen, and I'll tell you, it'll make a huge difference. So try to take 60 to 90 seconds in the middle of the day 60 to 90 minutes in the morning and at night so that you can be present and fully engaged in your own life. Research is going to back up. That's the first thing you've got to do if you truly want to be happier. Second strategy is what I call see happy. See happy. We've got to look for the good. And I loved it in Brian's session this morning when he was asking what you can do for your co-ops, and somebody said, be positive. Yes. It's absolutely one of the best things you can do. And it's tough in this culture. The Journal of Psychology says that 85% of the information we're exposed to on a daily basis is negative. And I would venture to guess that as admins, I mean, people are probably not knocking on your door saying, just want to let you know everything's going great, don't need you to do everything, you're doing a fantastic job and we appreciate you. You guys get that all the time, right? Yeah, so it might even be more, but 85% of what we're exposed to is negative. And then our culture reinforces all this negativity. Help me, if you can, complete these phrases. You better save money for a... This is too good to be. No pain. Ah, you've gotten it too, from all over the country. But you've gotten the message that life is hard and good things don't last. So we get bombarded with more negativity. You know, they surveyed all the emotional words in the English dictionary. 38% are positive. All the other emotional words are negative. Almost 2 to 1. And when we get bombarded with all this negativity, it becomes a pattern. And I want to see if you guys have any patterns you have to break. So everybody stand up. This is good because if you've had cookies, you're going to pretty much go into a carb coma on me here in a minute. So, all right. So I want you to take your right hand. I want you to take it out to the side. Bring it overhead. Bring it out front. Make a fist. Bring it to your chin. Bring it to your chin. Yeah. Yeah. It's a pattern. We do what people do, not what they say. That's what makes parenting so scary. All right. Let's try another one. I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer to the question is in the story. So you're a bus driver. At the first stop, a man carrying a blue bag gets on the bus. At the next stop, a woman wearing a green jacket gets off the bus. And at the final stop, 2 little boys carrying soccer balls get on the bus. Okay, here's the question, and the answer is in there. What did the bus driver have for breakfast? All right, let me tell you the story one more time. I'm just going to emphasize one word. You are a bus driver. Yeah. We tend to miss that first word in a story. Good job, you can have a seat. But negativity becomes a pattern, and then we get caught in that loop of negativity. Now, I noticed I have a few visual learners in the room. You know who you are. So I want to give you a demonstration of this. So who will come up here and help me? Oh, don't rush the stage. Come on. All right, come on up. Come on up. All right. I know you're from a G&T because I talked to you last night. Yes. All right, so tell everybody where you're from and your name.
I'm Gail Varner, and I'm from Winchester, Kentucky, with East Kentucky Power Cooperative.
Okay, so I want you to stand right up here. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed, but I can't raise it very high. I had shoulder surgery.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to get somebody else to come up and help us, too, because I don't want to hurt you. That wouldn't be good. So I need another volunteer. All right, we got one more. Oh, is this Evelyn?
Yes.
All right, woohoo! All right, so Evelyn's up here, too. So I'm going to have you do it with your left hand.
Okay.
Is your left shoulder okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want any lawsuits. All right, are you right-handed or left-handed? Okay, are you healthy?
I'm healthy.
All right. All right, so let's switch sides, because you're going to do left and you're going to do right. That way I get to stay in the middle. Okay, so I want you to both put your arm out, and I'm going to try to press down, and you resist, okay? Okay? All right, here you go. Come this way. All right, so resist. Okay, that's where we're starting. So I want you can put your arms down. I want you to look out at them, and I want you to say, I am so happy. I love my life. Good things always happen to me. So tell them.
I am so happy. I love my life. I love my life.
Very good. You got it in there. Okay, so put your arm out and let me try again, okay? All right. Okay, now I want you to look out at them and I want you to say, just kidding. I am miserable. Bad things always happen. My life is horrible. Tell them. Say it.
My life is horrible. Bad things always happen.
Yeah. My life is just miserable.
It stinks.
Stinks. And Evelyn, how do you feel about your life?
You don't want to be me.
Oh, she said you don't want to be me. All right, put your arms out and let's see where we are now. Resist, okay?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it didn't hurt you, did it?
No.
That is what negative words do to us. They weaken us. If I had more time, I would have you all try it. When you leave here, go back, try this in your cooperatives. It never has not worked. It always works. I've done it with 250,000 people. So you saw how the words they said about their own lives and about themselves and about their own happiness affected them. Let's see what my words do to them. I think it is so brave of both of you to volunteer to come up here, having no idea what's going to be asked of you, having no idea what could happen. You just raised your hand and said yes. Your co-ops are very lucky to have you. Yes. All right. Let's see where you are now. Let's put your arm out, and you're going to resist. Okay? And let's see you. Okay. So you saw what my words did. Now, let's take it a step further. Remember, I have a present for them. They're going to have to split it because there's 2 of them, but there's plenty. They're sitting next to each other, so that's good. Oh, good. They work at the same place. We're all set. All right. So I want you to send them negative energy. Don't use any words. Just send them negative energy, kind of like, okay. I'm going to stand over here so I don't get any of it. So just send them, no words, just send them negative energy. All right? So put your arms back out, and let's see where we are now. Resist. And resist, okay? Do you get what this means, ladies? It is not just your words. It is what you think. It is what you think of your coworkers. It's what you think of those members when they walk through the door. It's what you think about your spouses and your children. Every word and every thought either strengthens people and lifts them up, or it weakens them and it tears them down. And it is why it is critical that we always have to be looking for the good, that whoever said the best way you can represent your cooperative is to be positive is absolutely true. So we can't leave them in this state. So no, my present for them, mint Milanos. Yeah. I walked over to the Publix this morning. I had to hide these with the bellman so that I didn't get into them. So I have a present for them, but I want you to give them a standing ovation. Woo! All right, let's see if you're back. Let's see where you are now. Good. Good. There you go. You can share them. Thank you both. Yes, thank you. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. We have got to be sure that we are always looking for the best. Oops. We're going to go. Oh, right there. So, Dr. Missouri Emoto is a Japanese scientist, and his life's work was to create a microscope that was so powerful that it could take a photo of a drop of water. He's got all kinds of research online, but he took 2 bottles of water. On one, he taped the words, "I love you," and then on the other one, he taped the words, "You are evil." And then he spoke those words to the water that was in the bottle. He took a drop out of each one and photographed it, and there's what he got. I mean, negativity is like a black hole. You know how sometimes when you're around like somebody who's really negative and it just makes you feel crazy? That's because that's what they're doing to your insides. We're 70% water. And our brain is the slipperiest organ in our body. So when you're around constant negativity, that's what it's doing to your insides. My husband and I have been happily married for 32 years, off and on. Yeah. That's a story for a whole nother day. But early in our marriage, we endured a tragedy that was so devastating to both of us. I kind of liken it with two people with broken legs. We were both so hurt, we couldn't help each other back up. We ended up getting divorced, and while we were divorced, we both went to counseling. We dealt with our pain, and we were able to get back together. We were getting married about 2 weeks later on the coast of Maine, and my husband's counselor asked him to bring me to his very last session. So I got there, and Dr. Phillips says, Kim, I asked Robert to bring you here because there's a story that I want you both to hear. It's about two friends, Martha and Jill. Now, Martha, she just was not very happy in her marriage anymore. She and her husband didn't have much in common. They just didn't really enjoy each other's company. Jill, on the other hand, she and her husband, they still had fun together. They really enjoyed being together. And Jill was actually very happy in her marriage, even though they'd been married about the same amount of time. He said, Martha got a little sick and tired of hearing about how great Jill's husband was. So she said, Jill, do an experiment for me. For 1 week, I just want you to keep a journal and write down every time you have to ask him to do something twice, every time he leaves a mess in the kitchen or his wet towel on the bathroom floor, anytime he does something that drives you crazy, just make a little note of it. Jill was like, of course, I love my husband. What she found after 1 week? Pages and pages and pages in this journal of things her husband did that drove her crazy. Dr. Phillips stops the story right there. He looks at my husband. He says, Robert, do you know why I'm telling you this story? I was just so glad he picked my husband. I had no idea where we were going with this story. He said, Robert, I'm telling you this story because whatever you look for in Kim, you will find. Whatever we look for, we will find. So it is crucial that we are always looking for the highest and the best in every situation. Because whatever it is we look for in our co-ops, in our communities, with our coworkers and our members, we will find it. So we've always got to be looking for the best. And if you think about your life is really a series of positives. Think about how many delicious, nutritious, wonderful meals you've eaten in your lifetime. Yeah. Okay, that's a girl after my own heart right there. Think about if you've ever had food poisoning. Yeah, I've had food poisoning once. I can remember it in great detail. We tend to remember the negatives far more than we do the positives. And being positive or being negative is a choice. And here is the reason I can tell you without doubt it is a choice. It is because every second of every minute of every day, our brain is bombarded with 11 million bits of information. But our brain can only process 40,000 bits of information. We get to choose which 40,000 we focus on. And we can focus on the 40,000 that is going to make us stronger and lift us up and lift up the people around us, or we can focus on the 40,000 that's going to weaken us and take us out of that happy place. So we get to see happy if we want to be happy. Now, the third strategy, I think, is the most crucial for women. And the third strategy is to connect. To connect. They did a survey of the 10% of the happiest people across the planet. They went in organizations, countries, all kinds of different institutions, and they said, tell us who you perceive as the 10% of the most happiest people here. And then they did exhaustive research, everything from age, race, gender, income, health. And they only found one constant, And that one constant was close, connected relationships. It was the only thing they all had in common. Robert Josephs out of the University of Texas did a really interesting study. And what he found was that men's self-esteem is enhanced when they feel they can maintain independence from others. Women's self-esteem is enhanced when they feel that they can create intimate, close relationships with others. It is that whole Mars-Venus. Now, relationships and connections are still important to men, but they're even more crucial to women. And we see this from the time we're little girls. You watch girls play. What do they play? They play hopscotch, dolls, house, school, right? Cooperative, collective games. What do little boys play? I mean, cowboys and Indians, Red Rover, they stink, they wrestle, they fight, right? I had 3 girls and then a boy in 5 years. I had 4 kids in 5 years. And everything in our house was pink. It was my son, who's now 26. He's a wonderful young man, but I mean, he grew up in pink onesies and playing with Barbies. And when he was about 18 months old, we are sitting at the breakfast table. He picks up a Barbie, he bends her in half, and he goes, Now, my daddy was a Quaker minister. I was brought up in complete nonviolence. They did not spank us. My dad felt any hitting was violence. We had no guns in the house. The diciest thing they watched was Sesame Street, which is not really known for its violence. Like, where did he learn this? And as a matter of fact, men have 2.5 times the brain space dedicated to sex and aggression than women. Women have 11% more neurons for language and listening. And this goes to our very physiology. Now with MRIs, they can watch a woman's brain during various activities. And when a woman connects with another woman through talking, okay, so you're talking to a girlfriend, the pleasure centers of her brain light up. And not a little bit, a lot, a whole lot, huge. It is second only to orgasm. Next time you call your girlfriend, it is the second best thing to an orgasm. Yeah. Whoop, whoop. And men wonder why we talk so much. Yeah. Not only does it go back to our physiology, it actually goes back to our very survival. You have heard of fight or flight. Fight or flight does not work for women. Number one, men are physically bigger than us, and they are hardwired to be more aggressive. So most of the time, we are not going to win in a fight. And when it comes to flight, how far are you going to run if you're 8 months pregnant? I mean, you can't waddle across the room without wetting yourself, you know? I mean, fight or flight did not work. We had to use tend and befriend. There was safety in numbers. So our very survival could depend on making those connections with other women. So it goes way deeper for us as women even than as men. And if we want to be happy, we have got to create the time and the space to make those relationships. I was coaching a woman, and she loved to play the piano. And when we would look at when her days got stressed, what do you think the first thing was that she cut out? Playing the piano. I said, no. Those are the days you need the piano the most. In fact, don't play for just 10 minutes on those days. Play for 30 minutes. We tend to let go of the things that we need the most in our lives. And one of the things we need the most, even in this busy world we're all living in, are those connections with other women. One of the greatest first places to start, of course, is at work. And I know this can be challenging because sometimes you don't have a whole lot in common with the other people in your office. Apparently, from what I'm hearing, sometimes they're your cousin. I don't know. But we need to create those connections at work. Now, if I said to you, you're going to go out with your friends this weekend and you're going to have so much fun. Fun is one of the best ways that we create connections at work. And let me tell you, there are some people who have forgotten how to have fun. Do you know that children under the age of 5 laugh or smile 400 times a day. By the time we get to the age of 35, it is down to 15 times a day. 400 to 15. I want you to know, I have counted all the laughs in this talk. You guys don't have to crack a smile till next Wednesday. And you're still going to beat the national average. Yeah, we've got to learn to have more fun. I believe every co-op, every business needs a fun committee. When I had my jewelry business, I had a fun committee. Of course, December, their job was always the Christmas party. Now, one year for Christmas, we're having our party, and I worked with all women. They were so excited. They're like, Kim, you've got to open your present. And I opened my present. This is what it was. Isn't that lovely? I said, all right, I love you guys, but why did you give me a helmet? And they said, because Kim, every time you're in the office, you break something, you hurt something. Like, this is for your own protection. We laughed. Of course, it could have been the margaritas. But when I went back to work, I hung this up in my office. It was about 2 weeks later, Gina comes into my office. She grabs it off of the wall. She takes it, and she's like, I have a problem and I can't figure it out. I need everybody's help. So I said, go down the hall and get the people you need, and we'll meet in the conference room. Well, Gina comes into the conference room without the helmet. I said, go get that helmet. Do you know how hard it is to get stressed out looking at somebody in this helmet? So this helmet became the rallying cry for I have a problem, but we found a way to make it fun, to inject a little laughter into it. And I want to encourage you to find ways that you can create fun in the workday. And I also want to encourage you, have fun with your kids. Have fun with your families. I have a boat on Lake Washita in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It is my boat. My husband does not have a key. He doesn't know how to drive it. He doesn't know how to put gas in it. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, he is. I call him my Sherpa. Actually, I call him my first and second mate. Get that? You are sharp. Some people are like, huh? Yeah. But it's totally my boat. I get the maintenance done. Every summer, I have girls' weekend. All my girlfriends come, and we know how to whoop it up. I mean, we're jumping off the top. We're dancing on the back. We hang on those noodles and eat our lunch in the lake, swim naked in the moonlight. I mean, we are just whooping it up. The first year this happened, so then the next weekend is family weekend, and they bring their kids. And the first time we did this, I was like, where did my fun friends go? They're like, put on extra sunscreen, no running. You need to get out of the water for 30 minutes after you eat. I'm like, I saw you eating your lunch in the water last weekend. Like, lighten up. Have some fun. There is no basis for getting out of the water for 30 minutes. Our mothers made that up. Google it. Google it. It's not true. So have some fun with your family and with your kids. And I know outside of work, we're trying to build those connections. Anybody here play bunco? Yeah, yeah, okay, bunco. Let's just be real. It is the stupidest game in the history of the world. Nobody goes to bunco to roll dice. We go to bunco so we can drink wine with our girlfriends. Yeah, whoop, whoop. Yeah. So it's a good attempt. Another one, book club. I joined book club. I was so excited. I'm a voracious reader. I get to my first book club. Half the women hadn't even read the book. My first book club, they never talked about the book. All they did at the end was go, what are we reading next month? Why don't we reread this one since nobody read it but me? So I joined a second book club. This is a serious book club with the high society women of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Guess what? We talked about the book for 5 minutes. Then it was just girl time. So we're trying to find those excuses for connecting, but we've got to go deeper. And I'm going to give you 2 tips on how you create deeper, more intimate connections with other women. You know, it used to be so easy. Do you remember, like, in kindergarten? Like, you just had to be within 14 feet of someone. Hi, Carrie, you want to be friends? Yeah, she sent me a recipe last night. We're friends now. Yeah, that's all it took, right? It's a lot harder nowadays, okay? So one of the ways, there are 2 things that you can do that are going to make your connections with women more authentic and deeper, and that is to quit comparing yourself. Quit comparing yourself to other women, and then lift other women up. Amen. Yes, amen. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. So some of you did the survey. I think about 70 of you did that survey that was sent out. One of the questions I asked was, how often do you compare yourselves to other women? 83% of you basically said comparison is an issue. That's you in this room. That's not just a statistic from women in general. That's this room. But let me tell you, it's very common. We're always comparing ourselves. There is no, in our society, there is no equivalent to the great Miss America pageant, right? As little girls, we get the message that we're competing with each other. And if we want to be happier, and if we want to create those deep connections with other women, we have to quit comparing ourselves. We have to own who we are. We have to own who that woman is and her strengths, and we need to celebrate those. And this is the reason it is so important. There was a wise Indian shaman who said the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between criticism of another and criticism of oneself. Anything we block for someone else, we block for ourselves. And if we want to get happier, we need to lift people up, because conversely, when we lift up and celebrate other women's successes, we also get lifted up. And if we really want to be happier and create deep connections with each other, we have got to start to celebrate each other. Actually, Evelyn and Carrie and I had a great conversation last night about how it is so important in these co-ops. A lot of you are working with a lot of other women in the office. You can't compete with each other. You've got to lift each other up, champion each other, and you will see your connections deepen. So we have talked about you've got to be present. You got to look for the good. You got to see happy if you want to be happy. And you've got to create deep connections with other women. The 4th strategy, I know you've already spent a whole hour on this conference, which is tribute to Jean and what an amazing conference she puts together, but it is to set meaningful goals. Set meaningful goals. If you set goals for 2018, I want you to stand up. Stand up if you set goals this year. Great. If you wrote those goals down, if you physically wrote them down, stay standing. If you didn't, go ahead and have a seat. If you wrote them down and you review them regularly, stay standing. Oh, you guys are exceptional. Let's give them a big whoop whoop. Whoop whoop. Good job. In America, 80% of people do not set goals. Of the 20% that do, 16% think them. They don't write them down. 3% write them down, and 1% writes them down and reviews them regularly. It's not surprising to me that in this group, you far exceed that. Setting goals, we have to know what it is we're aiming for. I don't think they play pin the tail on the donkey anymore, but those of you in my age group, that was the big party game. What's the first thing they do when you play pin the tail on the donkey? Blindfold you, and then what? Spin you around. Why? You can't hit what you can't see, right? You don't know what you're aiming for. That's why we've got to have goals. We've got to know what it is we're aiming for. When I decided to start my business, I would tell people, I started my business and I knew I wanted to be president and CEO of $1 million company. That was my goal. I had been a stay-at-home mom and a school teacher, but I was going to build $1 million business. And so when I would meet people and they would say, what do you do? I'd say, I'm president and CEO of $1 million jewelry business I built from my kitchen table. They'd be like, wow. That was my answer when my sales were $4,000. That was my sales my first year in business. And after a conference like this, I was out at my table selling my bracelets and my books, and there was this woman, and I could tell she was just like a cat. She was just waiting to talk to me. She didn't want to buy anything. Finally, after everybody clears out, she comes over to me and she goes, you "You are a liar." I said, "I'm a liar." She goes, "You told people you had $1 million business when you didn't." I said, "Oh, sweetie, I had $1 million business. All the money had just not arrived yet." Finally caught up to me. Yeah, whoop, whoop. Yeah, yeah. So we've got to set those goals. And in truth, I didn't want $1 million for the $1 million. When I was 23 years old, I was in an audience like this, and I heard a motivational speaker. And something inside of me clicked, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do someday. Then, of course, I found out I was pregnant. I had 4 kids in 5 years. That dream went on the shelf. And when I decided to pull it out, I thought, well, how can I get women to listen to me? And I realized, well, I'll build $1 million business. And I was so passionate about that. I so wanted to do something big so that I'd have a reason to stand in front of women and talk and tell them, you can do anything. Look, I did it, and I had no training. When we as women are passionate about a goal, when we set our mind to something, there is nothing that can stop us. Somebody told me, is it Kenyon, that his message was make a goal, get a plan, and take action. Doesn't matter how you do it. You've got, almost 3 months left this year. Set some goals. What do you want to accomplish? And then go after them and make them happen. Now, the fifth strategy after set meaningful goals is what I call get a grip, which is basically some coping skills. Because the bottom line is that nobody gets off free. Nobody gets a free pass. Doesn't matter how perfect somebody's life looks on the outside. What I have found is that we're all dealing with our stuff. We've all got issues. If we had time to go around this room, there isn't a woman in this room that hasn't felt heartache, betrayal, disappointment, loss. So whenever it is that we get kicked down and happiness seems the hardest, that's when we've got to have those things in our back pocket that we can pull out to really help make us happy. And I have a lot of these in my book, but I'm writing my 5th book. It's not out yet, but it's on women's happiness. But I'm going to share 2 with you that I think are most crucial for women, and they are forgiveness and gratitude. Now, my forgiveness story starts over 20 years ago. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. My 3rd daughter, Chelsea, at that point I had 4 kids. Chelsea was about 18 months old. She was on her 3rd round of antibiotics. The next day was Thanksgiving, so I thought I better take her back to the doctor, I guess get a 4th round of antibiotics and make sure we can get through the holiday. And what I found out on that Wednesday was that Chelsea didn't have strep throat. Chelsea had leukemia. Now, we were very encouraged because even back then, childhood leukemia had a 70% cure rate. So we thought our odds are in our favor. But what we found out 4 days later after more testing was that Chelsea had monosomy 7, which was the worst kind of adult leukemia in an 18-month-old. The next month took us on a roller coaster ride. We had joys and we had disappointments. We had a miracle. Of our 4 children, 3 of them had the exact same bone marrow. And my daughter, Lindsay, who's here, who I only get to see a couple times a year in the back, wave, Lindsay. She was a perfect match bone marrow donor. And my son, Rob, the one who probably was in a pink onesie at this point, was also. And so Rob donated bone marrow on his 1st birthday. But 2 weeks later, we got the news that the bone marrow didn't take. And on the night of May 21st, 6 months to the day from the day Chelsea had been diagnosed, my husband and I sat on the 10th floor of the Minneapolis Pediatric Bone Marrow Transplant Unit. We sat knee to knee with Chelsea cradled between us. And we held her as she took her last breath. So breathe with me. The next morning, my mom was with us, and she took the kids out to the playground at the Ronald McDonald House, and my husband looked at me, and he said, "Life is never going to be the same." I said, "No, it's not." We went back to Arizona, and life wasn't the same. Life was worse. I have always been positive and optimistic. I have a high happiness set point, and I will tell you, I fell into a pit of despair that I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull my way out of. I just felt myself losing my joy and almost my life force. I was just so deeply sad. And often we don't give men enough credit for knowing how to handle their emotions and knowing how to grieve. My husband knew exactly what he needed to grieve. It was a brand new Harley Davidson. Yeah. This is our Christmas card. Oops. Oh, now I got to go back. That was our Christmas card the year after Chelsea died. And I didn't figure this out until about 10 years later. I was looking at that picture, that little blank spot right there between Lindsay and Allie. It's right where Chelsea would have gone. And so my husband got a Harley Davidson, and he went on a trip across country with two of his buddies. They were gone almost a month. And when he roared back in our driveway, he was different. He looked different. His energy was different. I could tell that something inside of him had flipped. And so I thought, well, maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need to take a trip. That very week, I get a flyer in the mail for a seminar in Carmel by the Sea, California, called In Celebration of Your Total Womanhood. Well, I was not celebrating anything about being a woman, but I looked at that and I thought, I'm supposed to be there. I went to this seminar. I can't tell you anything about the seminar except the very last night. And the very last night, they bring in this man named Rob. Now, Rob was the therapist to the stars. He lived in Hollywood. He happened to be personal friends with the woman running this seminar. And so after dinner, about 8 o'clock, I'm sitting on his right-hand side, and he starts around the room, and he's giving each woman a little, 20-minute therapy session. Women are crying. They're getting all these ahas. That's just what I needed to hear. And, I'm over there just drumming my fingers like, okay. What's he going to say when he gets to me? So by the time he makes his way around the room, it's about midnight. He looks at me and he says, I feel such intense pain coming from you. I'd like to do your session in private in your hotel room. I bet you would, buddy. Once I cleared it with the woman running the seminar that it was safe to take this man up to my room. And let me tell you, the one big difference between Rob and Dr. Phil was that Rob was about 6'5". He was Italian. He had this head of wavy hair. He was built like a lumberjack. He was just this huge man. And I'm thinking, do I really take him up to my hotel room? She said I was safe. So on our way up, I was telling him what had happened in my life and about Chelsea's death and how just devastated I was. I was just gutted. And when we get up to my hotel room, he says, I want you to come in the bathroom. Now, this hotel had not been renovated, and there's a little tiny vanity that you could barely pass over. And he said, I want you to look in your eye, look in the mirror, and I want you to take your right eye, and I want you to look in your left eye, and I want you to tell Chelsea that you forgive her. I said, forgive her? She died of cancer. It wasn't her fault. He said, you know that in your heart, but in your head, you're still really angry at all the pain that she's caused you. How she's torn your family apart, how your marriage is suffering, and you need to forgive her, Kim. And then he said the words that really changed everything for me. He said, then you need to forgive yourself, because Chelsea's the one that died, but you're the one that's quit living. I took my right eye, I looked in my left eye, I saw Chelsea there. I forgave her. I forgave myself, and I started to weep and wail, and I was crying so hard, my knees were bumping that little vanity, and I was just, and all I could think is, I wonder what people think is going on in this bathroom at 1 o'clock in the morning. But in that moment, I got my life back. We forgive. Forgiving has nothing to do with the other person. We forgive because as women, if we hold on to that, it allows us to not be happy. It steals from our happiness. If somebody has hurt you through malicious intent, by doing something mean or destructive, It doesn't make what they did okay. We forgive for ourselves. The Buddha said, refusing to forgive someone is like drinking poison and thinking it will kill the other person. So we've got to forgive other people. You don't have to restore a relationship with them if they're still alive, but we do it so that we can claim our own happiness. Forgiveness is some of the hardest work we'll ever do, and it's some of the most important work we have to do if we want to be happy. Now, the second strategy is gratitude. Gratitude is the one thing that they have found that can really change your set point, that kind of genetic set point that you come in with. And gratitude is all about looking for the good. I want you right now to think of the two most painful circumstances in your life. I want you to think about the two experiences up to this point in your life that have been the most painful and the most difficult for you. Get those in your head. Then I want you to think about the two experiences in which you have learned the most, in which you've grown the most, which have stretched you the most, which have made you who you are. And for how many of you do those match up? Yeah. See, we don't grow on vacation. We grow in the middle of the pain. Yet anytime something uncomfortable, something unpleasant, something difficult comes along, what do? We try to get rid of it. I call those things AFO, another fun opportunity. Yeah, that's when we're going to grow. And again, I think you can probably tell I'm a little bit of a research geek, but there was a really interesting test they did. They called it the eraser test. And they took people that had been traumatized and dealt with difficult circumstances, and they gave them the option, if they could, to erase that experience. If they could have erased that experience, would they? And do you know? A few people did, but the majority of people would not erase those painful experiences because they realized it put them on a different path. They realized that that was where they really grew into who they were. We use painful experiences to either define us or develop us. I believe with a 100% certainty that Chelsea's life was perfect. She lived every day she was meant to live. Her death was not early. Her death was not tragic. Her journey was her journey, and it was perfect. And your life is too. I believe we're all right where we're supposed to be. And when we can look at any situation and find the good in it, that's when we will become the happiest. Now, whoop. Before I share my final story, I want to let you know, a lot of you have already been back to my table, but I have books out there. Let me tell you about them. I have an award-winning book, and it's on how to be happy and successful at the same time. And then I have a quote book that goes with it. How many of you love quotes? Yeah, I love quotes. So here's a quote book, and you get a bookmark. You get all three of these for $200. Just kidding. Gotta have fun. $20. And then I also have these white stone bracelets. Before I tell you about them, I want to let you know that after I speak to a group of women, I always offer you some free resources. They're resources if you want to do a deeper dive on any of the strategies that I've shared with you. Next to my books and bracelets out there, I have a little round table. You can either just leave me your business card, write your email address, your name and email address on a scrap of paper if you don't have a card, or there's a sign-up sheet. Leave me your name and email address, and I will send you a link to a password-protected page on my website. There's all kinds. There's a forgiveness exercise on there to get you started on forgiveness if you have forgiveness work you need to do. There's a great PDF on how to make friends as a grown-up, because it is a little more challenging. There's a goal-setting exercise on there. So if you want all that material, just leave me your name and your email address, and you'll get that sometime next week. And if you happen to work in a co-op that brings in trainers and speakers, or if you're part of your state association that brings in speakers, please put an S on there for speaker, and I'll reach out to you personally next week. So my final story has to do with these white stone bracelets. When I got home from California, when I pulled into the driveway, my husband looked at me, and he said the same thing I did. He's like, "You look totally different. What happened in California?" I said, "Honey, this 6'5" Italian man came up to my hotel room. Then I realized that was probably not where I should have started the story. But there was still a lot of grieving to be done and a lot of healing to take place. And in the months after I got home, I started to find white stones everywhere I went. Not a pile of them, just like one white stone, and I would pick them up. And I didn't know what they meant, but I felt like they were from Chelsea, and she was trying to tell me something. It was about 2 months after this had been going on, and I was in church one Sunday. And the pastor that Sunday was talking about the story of David and Goliath. And she said, everybody gets that David represents that underdog. David represents that spirit within each of us that can triumph over even insurmountable odds. Goliath represents those huge obstacles in life, those things that it seems we can't defeat, things that seem almost bigger than us. But what nobody ever talks about are the smooth white stones that David used to slay Goliath. And those white stones have a message for us as well. And I knew what she was going to say next were not words that she wrote for that congregation. I knew it was Chelsea giving me my message. And she said, those smooth white stones represent our ability to slay any giant, to overcome any obstacle, and create a life that we love living, create a life where we are happy and joyful. And I knew that's what Chelsea was saying to me. Mom, it's time to move on. Find your happiness. Slay any giants, overcome this grief. And that is my final message to you beautiful women. Don't let anything stop you from your happiness. Slay any giant, overcome any obstacle, and create a life that you love living. Join me on my mission to make this world a happier place. Whoop, whoop. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Thank you.